Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Ramsey Custom Shop, and I'm in the living area. As you can see, we got stuff stacked up down through here. I'm gonna have some of these for sale if anybody's interested in it. You know, obviously it's a turbo skull, kind of a generic thing, pretty cool looking, and I can make these for about 125 in a single layer, single color like that. If you want it 2 layers with like a black background, you know, probably looking at like 200 for that. So if you're into turbos and you like candy glossy paint, you might want one. I'll show you another one I did in a second. So you might have saw the couple of videos I did on that. That one's sold. This one is not sold. And it got hung up in the belt sander, and it put a line in it right here. So I was trying to come up with a way to kind of cover that up. But I'm not really happy with this torch bluing effect. So I'm going to truck bed line this one. And the truck bed liner will definitely cover up that little line that the belt sander put in it. That one right there it's either sold or I'm going to give it away as a Christmas gift to a family member. I'm not sure yet. We'll see on that. This one's sold. This one's sold. This is not sold. That is not sold. So that's a candy green one. And this just has the belt sander brushed effect with candy green and like 4 or 5 coats of clear on it. And it kind of gives it an anodized looking finish, which is kind of neat. So if you see any of this stuff that you like, let me know. All right, guys, just a little update from inside the shop, and now we're outside. And as you can see, I still haven't got my gutter done. I need to run my weed eater. Man, it's just rough looking over here, but hey, check it out inside. Oh yeah, look at all that space over there. And of course, we got our TrueCut G3 green machine. That thing's been running really good. Been cranking out a lot of stuff. Here's a project that I did a couple weeks ago, and those that follow really closely know what that's about. And I did make a video on doing that, and that's like going to be part of a bigger video where I'm going to have some sheet metal storage drawers that'll be on that if I ever get around to finishing it. And those of you that have followed closely, you know what's going on with this, but there's making space for that laser tube cutting machine that I'm getting, and it's gonna go right there. And my thoughts are, once I see how the placement of it's gonna work and all that, is to end up putting a jib crane right here in the middle that can service that or that. And then you know, of course, if I switch around and point you back the other way, you know, there's the roll-up door, so I could just back my truck in right up to the jib crane that'll be right here. Unload, you know, sheets off to go here or tubes off to go there. And of course, all the thin stuff, you know, would be in these drawers underneath this table. And I put a video on a Facebook, CNC Facebook group about, has anyone ever used your CNC gantry to pull sheets up on the table? So if I could slide these drawers out and then attach a magnet and have a couple of rollers, you know, mounted out here this way, and connect the gantry to the magnet real quick, and then just use the gantry to jog it all the way back and pull a sheet up on the table. You know, I was mainly just clowning around, but boy, I got some interesting comments when I saw it when I did that. So I do want to come up with a way to do that, you know, to pull a drawer out and then have a sheet go up and over onto the table without, you know, I mean, it's not that big of a deal to pull it out and then lift it up and slide it down here and then lay it up on the table. They weigh about 60 pounds, I think, the 16 gauge ones, which is what I use the most of. And that's steel, and the aluminum is even less than that. But I do have a video on this, and my thoughts on doing this are, I can roll it out, and when it gets completely empty, it's light enough I can just load it in the back of my truck, go get steel on it, and they stack it right on there with a forklift or just manually, depending on how many I get. I got 15 on this one, and you know, it just took a couple minutes with a couple guys sliding them off on there. And then back in here and hook the whole thing up to my gantry crane and lift it out of my truck, set it on the floor, and then just roll it under there. And that way I'm not double handling material, because, you know, on this vertical rack, I would always have to double handle it. So I've gotten this one empty now that I've got my 16 gauge over there, and I don't really have a lot left. I've got an 1/8 inch sheet and some other, you know, like 1/4 inch aluminum and some other just miscellaneous things. But this one right here is looking like we may be able to get rid of that soon, maybe, possibly. We'll see, because I've got this for all my big, thick, heavy offcuts and things that are right here. But, and this has worked out well. It's allowed me to use a lot of this stuff that was like stacked up in a way that you couldn't get to any of it, you know, and with this all being sort of slotted and stacked vertically, I can get to any of it. So it's a lot of 1/4 inch and 3/8 dropouts, you know, some 1 inch down there, some 1/2 inch back here on the back, and odd sections that were dropouts or offcuts. So my bandsaw that used to be running that way is now over here, you can see. And right here, I've always had these 2 drops coming down for power. And this is a 220 drop down that I power this. And I keep this tied up out of the way because the way I had it, you know, with the thing there, I was always hitting my head on it. But I never use it. I thought I would always, you know, when I want to use a 4.5 inch angle grinder, I would just grab this and use it here at the plasma table. But I don't use it that way. And now I've got the battery powered one, so I don't even really need a cord. But I do need a cord for occasional things. And mostly now I just grab that extension cord there, hook it into whatever tool I've got, and then just pull the whole thing over here. And when I'm done, I just, you know, scale it back. You guys remember seeing this. This has worked out really well as well. I use a lot of these little small offcuts for logos and things, you know, like these, you know, if I need to cut a little something out, you know, I can just come in here and grab a little small piece of aluminum and throw it on the plasma table over here and cut it. Like, in fact, there's one on here. If you saw that Texas flag in there, I'd made 2 of those. And so this was a piece of diamond plate, and it actually works out well to use the flat side and just do a brushed finish on it, and it looks good. And, you know, it's a nice thick material. And that was just free material because it was a job that the customer gave me the wrong files, and I cut some stuff out, and they're like, "Oh, that's wrong. You know, let us send you the right ones." And it's their material. And I was like, "Okay, what do you want me to do with these wrong ones?" "Well, I'll just keep them or throw them away or whatever." So I had a few of these, and those had gotten stacked up, and I forgot I even had them. And so now I'm, you know, pulling the stuff out, and I can get to it, you know, pretty easily. And so like those diamond sheets are in here. There's a couple more of them in there. So I'm really happy with, you know, kind of the organization and you know, and how everything's working out so far. And by the way, here's a background for one of those turbo skulls that'll fit just behind it. And I could, you know, leave it in a bare metal finish or black or, you know, whatever. Okay, so over here, you remember I had the bandsaw in feed and out feed, and then down here I had this wood chop saw and a separate little table that was going up, and I never use it. I mean, I might cut a 2x4 or something every now and then, but I just don't use it that much, you know, to have like a dedicated station set up for it. I mean, I don't make any money off of anything with wood, and this shop is here for my employment to make money. You know, and I've kind of came to that realization that this is not a tinker toy shop. It's not a, you know, sit around, let's have a bunch of fun and, you know, tinker with stuff and make YouTube videos, because honestly, YouTube videos are not a big money maker for me, you know, and they never really have. I make a little bit of money, you know, per month, but I mostly just do it for fun. I like making the videos, and even though a lot of the ones I make that are the fast paced with the music and showing the build, they get very, very few views. I mean, and most of them, you know, are demonetized because I use commercial music in them, which is now allowed by YouTube, and they don't frown on it or anything, but they just don't pay you for it. They take the money that video makes and give it to the artist or the musician, which is cool by me. I just do it for fun. You know, it's one of the things I like to do. But it doesn't make me a lot of money, making those kind of videos. So I don't know. I'll still make them here and there, and and that kind of thing. But like here's a job, kind of a somewhat typical job. I showed a version of this on a video a little while back, but these like $20 augers that had this hex shaft and this section here together, they got from Amazon, but they wanted a spade type masonry bit on the end of it, and then they also wanted the edge of this hard faced. So I TIG welded some. I couldn't get any hard facing rod for this, so I TIG welded some stainless 316 on there and ground it down because it had just mild steel and it was wearing out too quick for them. So we'll see. And they wanted extended 32 inches. So I did these 3 for them, and and I put it on the lathe and drilled into that with a 1/2 inch drill bit, which is the same as what this hex is, and then slid those in there to try to get it as concentric as I can. They wobble a little bit, but even these that were a short version of it out of the box wobbled a lot. So I tried to get them, as concentric as I could, given what these are. They go in a hand drill and they run them on low speed. So, and they just drill holes around the perimeter into dirt around the perimeter of a house to do termite treatments. So anyway, I'm going to keep, I know I'm ADDing you guys to death here, but so I'm going to keep that right there. I had planned to take that off and put it on this wood table over here and have it just sitting up over here where I could use it to cut stuff. But, the way I'm set up here with all this is all, this table, that table are all kind of clustered together in the bandsaw. Well, that would sling wood chips everywhere, kind of all in this area, and be hard to clean out, hard to get to, and so I thought just keeping it over here by this door, and it kind of fits in that space right there. And I've got a cord, even though there's not a power outlet right there, I've got a cord I can drop down, hook it up, and, cut something with it when I need to. And it's over here by this door. I can open up both those doors and just blow the wood outside, and take care of it that way. So then that left the bandsaw, and so I've got it over here. Now, I bought this thing used on Craigslist when I first started the shop. By the way, I'm coming up on 3 years since I, originally moved into the space and started all this and quit my corporate America job. And so still going strong, still doing well. I mean, nobody is getting rich by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm making it. I'm surviving, I'm paying the bills and moving on along, and I get to do what I want to do and do the things I love doing. And of course, making YouTube videos and interacting with you guys is all a part of that. But anyway, long story short. So when I bought this used, the guy was like, I had no interest in these C-channel in-feed and out-feed tables that he had built for it. I thought I was going to, build some really cool table to go along with this that had in-feed and out-feed, and it had, sliding measurements. Those, you see them, they're expensive. They're like $2 or $3 grand. It's a station that's meant for like a wood chop saw, and it's got a digital scale on it, and you punch in like, I want a cut that's 3 feet 6 inches, and it's got this slide that'll go out 3 feet 6 inches, and it's a stop, and you just butt your piece up to it and cut it. And so I thought I was going to get like a really fancy and sophisticated, and I saw Tom, this old house, Tom, whatever his name is, what I'm talking about. I saw him using one. I was like, man, I got to have that. But anyway, so I ended up just getting this, and it worked out well. And sometimes you don't need fancy, and sometimes simple is good, and sometimes simple works good. But now I'm in this mode of keeping things as open and clear as I can. And I think I'm not going to even hook up this outfeed side, because I didn't really use it a lot, and it ended up just being a storage place where anything and everything that I wasn't using, I would just lay it there, Now it was handy for if I were to, production cutting a lot of small pieces or whatever, I could just stack them up on that as I was working on them, and it was a handy little area for that. But what I'm thinking is I'm going to cut like 12 or 18 inches off of this and bolt it on here. Each side of it bolts on right there. And it can just be bolted on unsupported and not need an outrigger supporting it there, and get rid of all this extra space and leave it open. And because I'm going to be right here by this bench, I'm going to slide this back in here. I have to be careful about how close I get this to anything, because this thing needs to rotate around and have clearance to get the angles on it. So I can't like back it and butt it all the way in there, but I'll get it back in there as close as I can and make sure I have full range of motion on that. And then just have like maybe 12 or 18 inches of this sticking out, and then get rid of the rest of that. And that'll open up all this space here. And again, I've got my bench, so if I'm working on production, cutting a bunch of stuff, I can just stack it here, because I'm likely going to deburr it or whatever next anyway, right there on that bench. So that's gonna work out well. And then I was talking about power earlier. Man, I'm so ADD. So I'm gonna pull this down and probably tie those cords together and let that extension cord drop down so I can hook my saw up and not have another drop point coming. I don't like having stuff hanging from the ceiling and drop down everywhere, So it's really the only place in the shop really that I'm having power, come down. And it'll just be from here. So one running the grinder and the other one running that. And things are getting tight, over here. I've kind of consolidated and cramped, but so far it's kind of been like this for about, a couple months now. And I'm not really having any issues with it. Normally I would keep this separate second table down here a little ways and keep these spaced out, but I was working on something that I needed both of them together for. So far it's all working out well. And this machine that I'm getting is supposed to be here on October 25th, which is, coming up here in the next week or two. And it'll be interesting getting that in and all that. I do want to mention that I've got, something coming up that may be a really cool and exciting thing, that's I've got to make a decision on. So an opportunity has been presented to me. And it's one of those kind of deals where I'm a one-man show. I'm over here tinkering around doing auger bits and metal art and whatever anybody's willing to pay me to do to make money, and I'm scraping it together $100 at a time, that kind of thing, and over the course of a month, hey, you end up with a, couple, $2,000-3,000, enough to pay the bills and, eat some food and maybe save a little bit to buy some other tools and machinery with, but certainly nobody's getting rich. But this opportunity is like going to another level, and where I would need some help, and I wouldn't be able to do it all by myself like I have been. And I've had several employees here, and I've discovered that I don't really, even though I spent my whole corporate career managing lots and lots of people, hiring, firing, multi-levels of management, where I had managers and supervisors under me who had then people underneath them, as many as 100 people in one organization that I managed. And I just did it because that's what I fell into. And as soon as I got out on my own and hired my first few people, I figured out I don't really want to manage anybody anymore. And you guys might be able to relate to that. I don't know, if you've ever managed anybody because you had to, and that's how you fed your family and that's how you made a living. But now I don't have to do that. I can keep doing what I'm doing. It's working out okay. Again, I'm not getting anywhere fast, okay? I'm not, like a Fireball Tool or John Grimsmo or John Saunders at NYC, CNC, where those guys are just like going nuts with how well they're doing, and, and they've got employees and stuff, and they're running a real business versus, me here just kind of doing my own thing. But this opportunity I have, which I can't really say what it is yet, would be taking me to another level where I would be forced into even more work than I do now. I work every day. I work pretty much 7 days a week. Some days harder than others, and, that kind of thing. But this would be like a real, pushing you into a hard grind, you know what I mean? Especially in the beginning to get it going. But it could be really fun and really rewarding and a good opportunity to, do something really cool. And I'm kind of leaning toward taking it, at least giving it a try. It's got very, very little risk in it, which is a very attractive thing. If I try it and try to help these people out and it takes off and I can do it, it would be fun, and it would be, potentially quite rewarding in a lot of different ways, monetarily to some extent, but just knowing that you've built a pretty big, a bigger company, you're cranking out a real product on a regular basis. So anyway, guys, listen. Here's an example of something that happens on, in a small business. Here, let me pull this open and show you this. I got layers stacked on top of layers, but those 4 boxes right there, and this right here is a $2,000 table kit I built for a guy, and he paid it's $2,200 with shipping and everything. So it's one of those industrial table kits that I build and sell, dining table kits. So he was all about it. Paid me a deposit of $200. I got started on it. He later paid me another payment of $300. I got it finished, ready to ship. And he said, I've ran into some financial problems, and I'm not going to be able to pay it this month. This was in early August. He said, check back with me in September. So he's now $500 into it, which kind of covers my most of the cost of the material in it. And now I'm just kind of out the labor and the time involved in, getting it all cut and made and assembled and welded. There's a lot of welding that went into it as well because of the particular modifications he wanted on it. And now it's been a couple months. I haven't heard anything from him. So, I can resell that, but I probably got, 3 days worth of labor into it. So it's one of those deals where, there's 3 days worth of labor. I worked every day, all day, and don't get any pay for it, at least not yet. But those kind of things they have a way of coming around, I've built other things and had to sit on them for a while, and eventually you sell them, and and that's why you can't run a cash-strapped business. And that's why you can't be in debt and take out loans for everything, because if you do, and you got payments to make on all your equipment and your shop and all that, and when you have those kind of deals, you can't afford them. And it's made me learn too that, I've got to get, I had a guy ask me to build a mobile duck blind for him this week, where he wanted this duck blind built onto a trailer that he had. And I gave him a quote of $1,200 to make it. And I said 100% payment up front. Because you know what, duck blind guys, and this is no offense, I got lots of relatives that are, hunters, but they're kind of the same way. You can't trust them. They'll be like, oh yeah, let me give you $100, get you going on it, and I'll be ready to pick that thing up. You'll never hear from them. And you'll have 3 days worth of work into it, and, and some piece of crap duck blind trailer sitting out in your property, and you can't get rid of it. So, all right, guys. I wanted to show you guys, if you're still there paying attention, I know this is getting like really, really long-winded. And by the way, I went to the NHRA event here last night and ran into one of my YouTube viewers there, and I should have taken the time to talk to him a little bit more, but if you're watching this video, hey, I appreciate you saying something to me, and it was good to see you there, and what an awesome weather night to be out at the races. But NHRA national event here in the Texas Motorplex is just about 30 miles from where my shop is, so it's easy for me to get out there. And so I wanted to talk to you about this thing. As you can see, I got the front door off of it now, and this is how I've been having to run it. And I have to manually track this thing as I'm using it, and it's working okay. But obviously, you'd love to have that door on there, because if that belt breaks or a piece of metal gets hung up in there, violent things can happen. And but so far it's working well, and I'm having to just kind of, it'll kind of run itself, and you can get it tracking in the middle. But sometimes if you feed something through that's kind of angled off on one side, it'll kind of want to pull it. And so I have to kind of watch it. And if I see it nudging over, I'll just kind of, reach up here and tweak this a little bit and track it. But what happened was, okay, the last video you guys saw, I rebuilt the pneumatic cylinder on it. And because it had lost its ability to track, and it was leaking really bad. So I thought it was the cylinder causing it. And it would sometimes do its tracking thing right, and sometimes it wouldn't. And so I got the seals and the parts. You guys might have saw the video on that, and that needed to be done anyway. And when I got it back together, it was running great. And then a couple days later, it started doing again what it was doing before. And what I've been able to determine, and I've had this on and off a bunch of times, but this multi-beam, what is that? Banner brand multi-beam. It's got a magnetic or optical eye in it that's looking at that reflector. And when this paper gets over in front of it and covers up the eye, it sends a signal to this pneumatic cylinder right here, which you can see the information there on that. And that pneumatic cylinder engages pneumatic solenoid, I guess would be the better word, engages this pneumatic cylinder up here that I rebuilt, and kicks this thing and causes it to track. And so it goes through this motion of, tracking it over. And so I know that this has two 120 volt feed lines coming into it, and there's two lines going back out of it that are the returns going back. And I have 120 volts coming into it. And at one point I didn't. And let me walk around here and show you this. This is kind of interesting. So I was doing some, tracing around on it. I'll tell you what, let me do this real quick. I've gotten way too comfortable with these machines, and this thing's got three 120 volt, three phase inputs coming into it here. And you see that black one right there, I'll explain that in a second why that's black. But if you see this fuse right here, it's very interesting. I was not getting the 110 2 volt leads going to that eye were not, the sources were not hot. And so I did some troubleshooting, backtracking, and I found out that this fuse was not working. And then, so I went and bought one. I didn't even think anything about it. I just went and bought one. And this is a 2.5 amp fuse, and all they had was a 3 amp. So I bought the 3 amp and stuck in there, and I got it working. But then I noticed in here that they got a whole box of those in here. And who knows how long they've been in here and why. You know what I mean? Why do you have a whole box of these fuses in here? So is there some kind of problem going on with this? But it is live now, and I've not had any problems with it blowing since then, although you can see there's a little smoke right there. So what I tried to do was the outfeed lines that come back in through right here. There's a couple of wires here that are the in-feed that come back from that eye when it's triggered, and they make their way down and come into this. So I tried to, and I found the pinouts over here. So I tried to take one of these 110 leads and jump it over to the output that triggers this thing to see if I could manually get that to trigger and fire off the air cylinder and get that to work. Oh man, when I touch this lead from the 110 input coming here from the fuse panel to the output going down to this, dude, that thing, the wire stuck to it. And it immediately tripped the 70 amp breaker that's over there. And I felt it. I felt it come through me. See, I've got a little bit of electrical and a little bit of electronics knowledge, enough to be stupid, enough to kind of like know what where to kind of look. But I don't have anywhere near enough. And it's honestly, it's worked out well for me. Like pulling down some wires to get 3-phase over here. A couple of these other ones over here I've ran outlets to, I believe. Oh, there's another 3-phase right here that's running my plasma table. If you see this little conduit I dropped down, I mean, I ran that, and I've got my plasma cutter hooked up. So as far as I know, I can do some kind of basic stuff like that. But this thing scared the crap out of me, and I just shut it off. I didn't mess with it for like a day or two. And I've got it figured out now that I can run it manually and manually track it and do what I need to do. It's kind of a pain, but it's way better than sitting over here grinding with a hand grinder. And it leaves such a beautiful brushed straight grain finish on anything that comes out of it. It's really nice. So and I've called this company right here, and I bought some parts for that thing, which they're still in business. And one of the things that I found in it was this. This was all like this molded connector. I don't know if you can see that, but it's like brittle, dry rotted. And I wasn't sure if it was all making a good connection in there. So I took this out, and right now I've got the wires hardwired into it. That thing's got 3 components to it, that eye does. And when I called them, they said, well, we have no idea what it is, but we can tell you that about 80% of the time it's the power block if it stops working. So this power block has the inputs here, and it goes up into some logic board and into the magnetic eye, and then comes back out to these output wires, which then go back into the panel. And so I replaced that in it, and that didn't change it. It acts exactly like it did before. And you know, this thing is made in the 80s. I couldn't find an exact, there's a part number on it right there, which is a little bit hard to read. And I gave that to them, and it didn't mean it. It didn't show up anything in their system. Again, this stuff's made in the mid 80s. Back then, companies didn't keep their records and track stuff, you know, like they do now. Anyway, I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on any of that. One of my thoughts is to just eliminate this magnetic eye and use a limit switch like this for belt tracking. So it's already got a limit switch on this side, which this one's worn out. I have to, you know, I've showed you these before. So the limit switch on this side, when this belt gets over here too far. So if this belt walks over, and if it gets over this far enough right here, and when it trips that, it'll shut the machine off. So what I could do is come on the other side, and right in front of that limit switch, you know, I could take some measurements and put another limit switch here that would trip first, but if it goes even further, it would trip the other one and shut the machine off. But when it just barely trips this one, I send the signal over to this solenoid here to kick the air cylinder and cause it to do its automatic tracking. So I was kind of thinking about that, because I think those magnetic, the problem with it is I don't really know how that's supposed to work. You know, I don't have a diagram or anything that tells me what the normal operation for it is and what it should be doing. So, and you can see there that the wires are just hardwired in, you know, I just ran them straight in. For now, while I'm troubleshooting, I was going to, you know, if I can get this to work, of course, I would pull that back out and seal that up, or possibly flip it upside down so that it's not open on the top side like that. But 2 of those wires, there's 4 wires in there. 2 of them are 110 feed, and 2 of them are 110 out. And I'm guessing they're 110 out. So the only other 2 things in there's the power board that connects to the logic board, and the logic board is kind of like tells it what to do, you know. And then the actual magnetic or the optical reader eye itself is in there as well. So I was just thinking about getting rid of that, simplifying it, just making a mechanical / electrical limit switch like this. You know, when it comes up to a certain point, it sends the signal, and just get rid of that eye thing altogether. So guys, I know it's a 30-minute shop update, and you guys are probably bored to death. It's Sunday morning, and I'll just show you, like, you know, this is one I just finished up on for a guy that's opening a restaurant in Dallas, and this is where this thing is a game changer. These are like 33 inches wide, and this is 36 inches wide. So instead of me hand finishing all that on both sides, I mean, in just a matter of probably 10 minutes, I had both of them ran through in a beautiful finish on it. And then I just came back, and did my normal artistic, hand grinding swirls in there just to kind of give it a little bit of character and detail. Same thing on this down here. You can see the patterns in it I put in there by hand. But that initial cleanup and getting the dross off the back of it and all that, oh, it's just so mind-numbing and messy. And it's really made my job a lot more fun. maybe one of these days, if I can't get this thing like fully tuned up, because I'm not a machine mechanic, you know. I mean, you see a lot of guys out there that can fix any machine. That's not me. Maybe I can someday. Maybe I'll keep working at it, but I just don't have the skills for it now. But, you know, to get a brand new one of these, you're looking at 15 grand for a nice one, you know, that's this size and all. And maybe one day I can afford to get that, you know, and just get a new one and have it just be a production workhorse and go from there. But anyway, guys, I hope you guys are doing well on this Sunday morning, and we will see you soon here. I got more videos. I got a build video on that I have to edit, and some other, just miscellaneous stuff. And then, of course, I'll have information on this tube machine that's coming in, laser tube cutter. See you guys. Take care.